This is the concierge, sir.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Concierge Confidential. I'm your host, Brian Ortega, and in today's episode, we're going to be talking about, did Vegas get too expensive? So this has actually become quite a topic in Vegas circles. We just had the Super Bowl. It honestly, at least if you're judging by the amount of people that were in town, felt like the most empty Super Bowl we've ever had. A lot of factors go into that. Obviously, the Super Bowl was in Las Vegas last year, so it obviously has that feeling that, oh, look, not as many people. But overall, speaking to people that I know that, are higher ups in hotels, they did say that it is a pretty significant drop from last year and even years before that. So it'll be kind of interesting to just see. A lot of factors kind of go into that, and I think people are going to sort of just throw out all these numbers of like, oh, it's because Vegas is too expensive. They've been sort of price, gouging everybody for years. And I think it's a very nuanced conversation to have, just because many people just love to say that, hey, it's just too expensive, lower the prices, which it has. Certain aspects of Las Vegas, I think, have done that. But I do want to have sort of like a talk about why things are expensive and a couple of factors why this is one of the lowest occupancy Super Bowls we've had in a while. So we're going to be talking about that, and then also my experience over the weekend. My parents were in town, so you guys know what that means. I know you guys love hearing about when my parents come to town. But when I do come to town, that means they get to try more food, which is always nice, and experience a couple things that I get to do on the Strip because they usually stay there. So we'll talk about that, as well as the Super Bowl coming up on Concierge Confidential. Okay, everybody, so let's go ahead and dive into Super Bowl weekend. So first of all, my parents came into town on Friday, and then they ended up leaving on Tuesday, and I took them to Gallagher Steakhouse, which I thought was a fantastic choice on my part. I did want to take them to Mother Wolf. As you guys know, I love that place, but took them to Gallagher Steakhouse. If you guys have listened to the pod before, I've done a whole review on Gallagher's during Restaurant Week, which honestly, one of the best Restaurant Week menus. But what I love about Gallagher's is that you can spend a lot of money there, but they do have some approachable things on the menu, relative to what Las Vegas prices are, which might be a good jumping off point for our conversation about expensive Las Vegas. But it was the three of us, and my dad doesn't eat a lot of food. He likes to pick at food. He's like almost European in that sense. But we ended up getting, I believe, a 28-ounce ribeye, which was absolutely delicious. Me and my mom shared it. We also shared a wedge salad with ranch, obviously, which they were actually able to cut at the table, which was very nice of them. And then my dad ended up having one of his favorite dishes, which is funny that it just ended up on the menu, which is split pea soup. He's a huge, huge fan. Had a lobster tail, and of course he had some bone marrow as well, which my dad loves, absolutely loves bone marrow, which I'm not a big fan of. So he loved it. So a really important note about, man, this sounds like a lot of food, which it was. We also had sides. We had potatoes. We had cream spinach, which was really good. My parents liked that. And then we also had two desserts, a giant piece of chocolate cake, and my dad ended up eating a creme brulee, which is one of my dad's favorites. So with that being said, how much did this all cost? So most of this was all without drinks, no cocktails, which honestly, I had a lot of cocktails at Wakuda, the time before, which actually totally forgot I went. Wakuda, great. Wakuda's over at the Palazzo, and I really enjoy their lounge, which has been rebranded, and they actually have a new little menu, which is, really fun. They have like this pineapple concoction, which is really, really tasty. And the cool thing about Wakuda's bar is that if you are a big sort of cocktail head, they will whip something up for you. They were really nice to me because I said, hey, is there a drink that you've been really trying to try? Which, for those of you, this is a trick. You can walk up to, you got to know the bar. You got to read the room. You got to know that bar is a cocktail-making bar. Don't walk up to a casino bar and think, hey, I'm going to be able to make whatever, they're going to make whatever I want. Walk up to a cocktail bar. How do you know this? There's a lot of cocktails behind them. Usually goes all the way up to the ceiling. If it's only, 2 stacks behind the bar, probably not a cocktail bar. But usually they're going to have a lot of cocktail spirits stacked up behind them, and just say, hey, is there something that you guys have been wanting to try, or just trying to work out, or science yourself with? And they'll probably make you something that you like. And sometimes if you order another drink after that, or you've ordered before and this was like the second drink, they'll sometimes give it to you for free. Why? Because you're kind of their guinea pig on that drink. And you have to give them good feedback too. Like if you're going to drink it, they want to know, like, what does it taste like? Is it good? Is it not good? And sometimes they hook you up. And they did hook me up at Wakuda. So appreciate to the guys and gals over at Wakuda, which my mom ended up going with me, and she got like the pineapple drink, which was absolutely delicious, which I would have never got myself. Which those of you who are a couple, that is very much a plus, just because you're able to sort of try your partner's drink, which is, I just really disappointed that I can't do that. But moving on. So overall, the food itself was about $200, which for 3 people is really good. That's actually very, very approachable. It's almost like buy 2, get the third one free. Because usually for a steakhouse in Las Vegas, you should look to spend about $120, $125 per person. So if you're able to get it to like around the price that we got, really, really great. So highly recommend Gallagher Steakhouse at the Palazzo. Really, really tasty. Loved it. Great ambiance. Great for old school Vegas. Classic steakhouse. I know it's a chain, but honestly, sometimes chains are really good. And Gallagher Steakhouse is absolutely phenomenal. I want to circle back on this. So, I went to the Chef Truck, which is over at the the Park MGM. And I usually love the Chef Truck, but kind of lackluster. The past 2 times that I ate there, I get the I get the pork medianoche, which is sort of like their Cubano, because they have a Cubano, but it's vegetarian. And I don't know. Maybe I didn't have enough time to enjoy it. That's just, maybe that's just on me. I did also try their new sandwich called Austin Midnight, which has barbecue beef in it, which was good, but just one too many cheeses. They have Parmesan cheese, they have sharp cheddar, they have, white cheddar, Gruyere cheese. Just felt like they just way too many cheeses. So that's just my personal feelings on it. And also the beignets used to be really nice because they were fluffy and big, and they were just nice, and they gave you 4 of them. They were fluffy, small, very tasty. And now they just give you this big giant beignet, which don't like. Now that I think about it, it just makes me sad that it's just oh, it was so cool, and now you guys are just let's just throw this thing on the plate. Not a big fan of that. So the Chef Truck kind of going down on, in my mind. But people are still going, so that's good. But yeah, I don't know. I just wasn't a fan this time around. What else did we do? So we ended up going to Circa, obviously. New York, New York. My mom loves New York, New York. But couldn't win. Just couldn't win at any of the slots today. She did win on her last night. She ended up going to the luxury line slot machine, which luxury line slot machines are great. For those of you looking to play slot machines, by the way, because I know it's kind of confusing for some people, the first 3 reels, those are the most important, are the first 3 reels. That's what you're always hoping for, the first 3 reels. And then from there, you'll figure it out. So now let's get into it. We've now basically spent 9 minutes telling you about my trip, which I ended up going to Jason Aldean's bar again on Friday. And I went with my mom. That place rocks. Highly recommend. Again, like I said in the last pod, I'm sure you guys heard it already. Jason Aldean's at nighttime, fan-flipping-tastic. Great for bachelor parties, great for bachelorette parties, live music, bumping, not expensive. This is actually the anti what Vegas would be like. And they don't charge cover charge to go in, at least when I was there. And very, very much, very straightforward. I had 4 or 5 cocktails, and it was only maybe $70, which that's cheap in this town. I've paid, I've had 3 cocktails and spent almost $90 for a cocktail. So really, really crazy. But let's get into it. So the expensive part of Las Vegas. So you could find record lows for a hotel room in Las Vegas for the Super Bowl. But again, a lot of factors go into this, because some people say, well, just lower them and they should be that price for the rest of the year, for the rest of time, at least for that month or that, like I said, a year. Because I had this conversation with a colleague of mine, And you can't do that because it's not fair. That's like not sustainable as a business. Because if you do that, then your supply is obviously going to get filled up, and then you're obviously, leaving money on the table, which again is not part of the capitalist system that America runs on, which some people say is a problem. But the thing is that it sort of helps regulate the amount of people that are in the city at the same time, and sometimes it's needed, like things like when the Super Bowl comes to town, or F1 is a very bad example, but I think it's always touchy because it's good for business is the thing, is that no one's going to pay, or no one on the strip is going to want to charge a low rate if you're going to come here for F1. But they shouldn't, price gouge you at every other point. So I don't have a problem with the base prices for hotel rooms. Where I do have a problem with is when we start, like we said, nickel and diming you in other parts of the hotels. For example, resort fees. Resort fees used to be $25. I mean, before there were no resort fees, but then $25, and it's slowly risen over the years where it's now like over $50 a night to stay in one of our hotels for resort fees only. That's crazy. If you stay for 3 nights, it's $150 added to your bill. That's just fees. We talk about Ticketmaster, but these resort fees are absolutely ridiculous. And I used to be a concierge, as named by the show. And it's like when people ask me, like, hey, like, what is a resort fee? Like, what do I get with that? They're like, well, we say, oh, well, you get internet, and then you also get like access to the gym. You can get access to a notary, which like sometimes we don't have a notary online. And who really needs a notary most of the time? I would say out of 100 guests on a trip, you're probably going to get like half a person that needs a notary. It's very, very rare. And then also, my goodness, they had other fees that were included in it. You can get like printing, I believe was a thing. Like we could print your boarding pass, which is like, sure, like fine. We used to do that for free anyways. Like cool. By the way, a really good way to get tips was to print boarding passes. Loved it. It was like easy money. And then one time I left like the shop open like for like an extra 5 minutes. We were actually closed, and the guy came in, and I was like, "Oh no, cool!" Like I helped him in, printed his boarding pass. Boom, Bob's your uncle. $5. So really easy way to get tipped as a concierge was boarding passes. So I don't think that we've gotten too expensive in terms of the hotel rooms, but we have gotten more expensive in terms of all the things surrounding the hotels. So gambling has gotten more expensive, which is not fun. Also, when you go to a restaurant, a lot of things that used to be included are not, like bread. Like we charge for bread at a lot of places. Please, when you guys go out, don't buy bread. Like just don't do it. It's gonna be the same shit. Like, unless you're going to Joe Robuchon where the bread is absolutely phenomenal, don't do it. Don't pay for a view. I mean, actually do whatever you want. Like, this is like your free will, but it is really annoying that has become a thing, and I really hope it does not take off, where they are charging people to have views of, say, the fountains, the Eiffel Tower, and I don't like it. It just feels like icky. It really does. And that's coming from a person, like I've tipped, people like, hey, just hook us up with a good seat. And it happens. It just happens. And you actually, the thing is a lot of things in Vegas can go unsaid. And I went to Mother Wolf and I was like, hey, the person I'm coming with is running a little bit late, just want to let you know. She's like, okay, cool. And then I was like, oh no, cool, thanks. And then I gave her a 20. And at that point, like, just to seem cool and impressive. And we got a really good seat in the restaurant, somewhat close to the kitchen, which in this restaurant, you want to be close to the kitchen so you can look in and see them making food. And then they also gave us, complimentary bread service at the beginning, and also like compliments of the chef, a dessert at the end, also not paid for. Like that one $20 bill saved me at least $35-$40. Like it's just, it's crazy. So again, like a lot of things are unsaid. And I don't mind giving $20 to the hostess. Like that's hers. Like she's making the decision. She's a human being. She can use that for something. She can use it for lunch. Use it for wherever you want. If I'm giving you $50 so I can have a view of the fountains for an hour and a half, and that's just going to big corporation like, big MGM or like Caesars, that feels wrong. Like it really does. And also for these big events, this is also another thing super annoying is that they will charge. This happened at the Super Bowl last year. I had made reservations fully in advance because my parents were coming. They come every year for the Super Bowl. And I wanted to have a view of the fountains because my dad likes that kind of thing. And we had, seats in the patio. That was sort of like the vibe. That was what we were looking for. And they don't tell you until the night before, like when you actually have to confirm your reservation, so the day before, 24 hours, they say, oh, and if you are going to eat at this spot, there could be $150 charge per person, spending requirement per person to sit at these tables. Really, dude? Really? I canceled. I didn't go. I ended up going to Carver Steak instead, which, it happens. So that is the thing that people do not like. I think it's the inauthentic feeling it feels like to come to Las Vegas. Back in the day, this is sort of like the old man yelling on the top of the hill, is that back in the day, people saw you. People, for over a 4-night stay, 5-night stay, you saw the same person over and over again. That person became kind of like your family. There's a reason why in the word hospitality, you hear house. It's like your home. You're opening up your home to somebody. And I think we need to get back to that a little bit. I think, and it's hard. This is a lot of stuff that needs to be implemented, but just better training on customer service is important. Not that customer service in town is bad, but just like the extra care that goes into dealing with a guest. And sometimes you just have to work through it. Like I've had guests where I just did not click with that person at all. I didn't get it. And you just have to kind of like roll through it. And I think that's just me as a person, that I'm very conversational. I'm usually pretty good read in the room, like kind of knowing, who's down with what I'm talking about and who's not. But like not a lot of people are. And I think that's a skill that needs to be learned, especially for hospitality, which honestly, compared to other cities, I do still think Vegas is one of the best hospitality cities in the nation, like better than New York, better than LA. I do think Vegas is the best at that, but we can always be better. That's always, kind of my thought. So I did want to bring this up again. Like it was so, oh my goodness, it was so dumb that I heard somebody on a thing, a gambling spaces, which is, that's terrible. And they were like, it's illegal for them to charge, men more than women at nightclubs. That still happens, guys. That's still a thing. So if anybody on that space is listening to this podcast, that's still a thing. But do I think Vegas has gotten too expensive? In some departments, I do. I do think it's important that we have all these different sort of tiers in terms of hotels and experience, because my Vegas might be different than somebody else's Vegas. And you might want to be staying here for a couple of days, or you really want to spend your money gambling or in a restaurant and don't want to spend it on accommodations. That's why it's really important to have hotels like the Link, like the Flamingo, like Harrah's, Excalibur, Luxor. These may not feel like luxury properties, but that's sort of to your mind. Other people might find that you're just in Las Vegas having this experience, maybe for the first time, that is luxury. And you never really know it until you do it. So not everybody has the same experience to be able to stay like 7 stars at Caesar's Palace or, be an M Life Noir member and stay at the Skylofts at MGM Grand. So I do think these different hotels are important. I do think they need to have a lot more personality than they do now. I know that MGM is going through a sort of rebuild or a rebranding, at least new decorations and renovation. But it's important, and I really think that we need these different tiers. And it's just going to happen where you start pricing out people, just like sort of how it happens at Disneyland. And you're not going to get that person that's going to spend, come here 3 times a year. They're going to come here maybe once a year. And I think Vegas is sort of coming at a head in that. But again, Vegas is really resilient. They go through a lot of different phases. We went through, Vegas in the 90s where it was a family-friendly destination. Then we had the cool, sexy Vegas, which was really awesome in the mid-2000s. Think Entourage. Then you started having sort of like the year and decade of conventions. And now we've kind of made our way back to sort of like sexy Vegas, I think, especially in terms of the shows. You can kind of figure out what the sensibility of Vegas is by the shows that we, offer. And shows themselves, depending on what you're going to go see, can be, quite pricey. If it's a very popular show, it can be almost $170 to go see that show. And it's just, I don't have huge problems with the price increases for shows just because that money does go to the production and how much it takes to stage for something, say, like O. And you kind of just live with those options. But, you just got to pick your spots. It's really what it is. One way that I can recommend to make Vegas a little bit more stomachable, a little bit more approachable, is really the amount of times you eat throughout the day and the amount of times you drink throughout the day. I know it's really hard to tell somebody like you need to like stop drinking so much, but it really racks up. That's really the thing that charges you the most. So like when you go to dinner, like maybe just don't have have a beer, like maybe have one cocktail at dinner. And I don't want to say like don't have any cocktails, but have at least one cocktail at dinner and you're going to see your bill go down. It's a really big deal. So that's what I would recommend. I would also say that one of the cool things about living here is that you see sort of ways that you can cut corners. And one way is that you don't have to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Breakfast and lunch and dinner can be a very expensive day. Like breakfast can be, $70. And then you go have lunch, that's another $50. Let's just say 60 to be safe. Then you go have dinner, that's, $175, $200. It adds up. So I think it's important to mix in, sit down options with a more casual dining experience. So a really good example of that was my past weekend. I went with my parents. I ended up taking them to Gallagher's. We ate there. Great. It was $200 out the door. Fantastic. On Sunday night after the Super Bowl, we ended up eating at the sports bar at Park MGM, which is also their sports book. And it was perfectly fine. I think you have to really sort of, especially if you're on a budget, find ways that you can sneak around corners to, operate in Las Vegas and have plenty of snacks for lunchtime. But again, breakfast should be the cheapest thing that you pay for. That's a sit-down meal. So if you're getting paid, charging over $200, $250 for breakfast, then you are definitely doing it wrong, which don't know anybody who's actually spent that amount of money, but I'm assuming it is possible. And then the next thing I will ask is, do I think prices will go down in Las Vegas? I don't think so. I think that Vegas is sort of known what it is for a while now, but I do think that they're going to get a little bit more approachable in terms of resort fees, in terms of what else do we have? Resort fees, parking. I think a really easy fix to parking in Las Vegas for locals in particular is that if we go to a validation system, so if I'm coming to Las Vegas, I'm going to spend money in the restaurants or at tables. If I spend over $50, boom, validate parking. That is a greedy one. I think this parking issue is definitely a greedy space, greedy tactic or policy or whatever you want to call it by the casinos because it is free money. It is essentially free money that they don't have to pay for. They had to install all the light systems inside, and that's all they had to do. And now it's just a money factory coming in and out, in and out, in and out is the parking. But move to a validation system, and I think you're going to see more people come to town, at least more people, more locals. And this is sort of the gauntlet thrown on locals. Like you said, hey, I will come to your property and spend money, but the really thing hanging me up is, the parking. That means if you come, make sure you dine at a restaurant, make sure you gamble in the casino, and it all makes it worth it. So I go and I spend, about $100, for, drinks and snacks and stuff, and that pays for my parking. So I don't know. I think parking validation is the way to go for Las Vegas. And you charge for valet. Like, you just charge for valet. People say, well, what about hotel guests? Well, then everybody's going to be a hotel guest. Because we all learned the trick that if they say, are you staying at the hotel? You say yes. And then you can give them a fake number. It doesn't matter. And Bob's your uncle, you're in. So that's that. So the last couple of minutes here, I'll talk about a little bit more about the Super Bowl. So I was able to get my dad into the Circa viewing party over at Circa, obviously. Doing what I do. I do know a lot of gamblers and people high up, and it was really nice that they offered that, and I was working that day. But Stadium Swim, really bumping on Super Bowl, I have to say. But overall, really fantastic experience. They had an open bar, so thank you to Derek Stevens and Mike Palm, the VP of Operations over at Circa. They're really great. Love the Circa property in terms of downtown, just because they do have Barry's, which is a high-end, steakhouse. Then you also have 8 East, which is fantastic, Pan-Asian cuisine. I love all of those things, and my parents even ate at Saginaw's and said it was absolutely delicious. And of course, the sportsbook and Stadium Swim. But again, those were kind of my, why is Vegas feel so expensive? Because, it kind of is. But also ways to sort of skirt around getting through a very, very expensive city. So with that being said, this is Concierge Confidential. Make sure to check us out on Twitter, which is @KeysToVegas, on Instagram, @Keys. What was I talking about? @KeysToVegas, or on Instagram is Concierge Confidential _LV. And of course, I'm Brian _Ortega26. And you can find me on Instagram as well. So again, thank you so much for listening, everybody. Hopefully you guys enjoy your Valentine's Day. If I don't see you before then, make sure to get those reservations in early, and make sure that you know that sometimes some of those are prefixed and you are stuck with that menu. I'm looking at you, Delilah. So with that being said, this is Concierge Confidential. If I see you out in town, come up and say hello, I'll buy you a drink. But remember, keep it confidential.